From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. This is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's podcast, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. And if you've seen over the last couple of days, actually today, there's a lot more podcasts on this network. So just keep watching it. And there's going to be a lot of podcasts if you like content, because there's going to be a lot of it added to the lineup here, as has already been added this week. All right, it's Monday. I'm back. Woo. Took a little mini vacation, missed the final practice of Saints minicamp. I don't normally do that, but it was anniversary week, and God bless my wife. I normally just, when there's football practice or a Saints thing, I got to do what I got to do. But she won this battle. We ended up going to Boston. We went to Fenway Park, caught a Yankees-Red Sox game with a couple of our friends. We had a fantastic time. Glad to be back. Highly recommend the Yankees-Red Sox game. I haven't seen it at Yankee Stadium, but Fenway Park was awesome. It was a great experience. I'm so glad I did it. I am glad I'm back now. Ready to get going, but we enter the post mini camp is really this is the time where sports really starts to dry up a little bit, because there's not a whole lot happening on the sports calendar. Thankfully, we have LSU right now doing their thing. By the time you watch this, maybe you'll know who won out of them or UCLA. So we have that, and we have some Saints stuff to talk about. But how you feeling today? I'm
feeling good. Welcome back. I'm sure you enjoyed the vacation, the Father's Day, and all of that. Now we're back, and like you said, it's kind of a lull in the sports calendar, especially in New Orleans, because we're still a bit far away. We're about a month or so away from training camp. We're a week away from the NBA draft and the Pelicans, who don't have the most enticing pick anyway. Luckily, we have somebody in the College World Series in LSU. And then tonight we've got Game 5 of the NBA Finals, which not getting talked about a whole lot, but it's one of the better. It's
actually been good.
It's one of the better NBA Finals in a long time.
David, talk about the ratings. The games have actually been pretty good. Yeah. I watched it. That night of the Yankees-Red Sox, I got back to my hotel, and it was the fourth quarter of that game. So we watched Yankees-Red Sox, which went into extra innings. It was the Friday game when Judge went yard in the ninth inning, and then there was a controversial overturn in the 10th. Red Sox win. Then we get to the hotel, and we watched the OKC Thunder really make a fourth quarter rally to beat Indiana to tie it up 2-2. So it's actually been pretty good from an NBA Finals competitive standpoint. It's just doesn't have quite the buzz, I guess, of some of the other big names. But regardless, here we are, and we are here to pump out the content that y'all need. And the Saints made a move as everything closed, their offseason program, but they get the 5 weeks off, but there's still these transactions that have to happen. There's still these deals that have to be done, and this is going to happen probably as we get closer to training camp and even into training camp. It's a well-known name if you really follow football. If you followed it, college football and NFL, was here for a tryout, did enough to earn a contract, and that's where we're going to go with the big picture.
Yeah, over the last few weeks, we've talked about the Saints adding to the cornerback room. That didn't happen. Adding a veteran quarterback. Nope, not that. We talked a bit about a big receiver. Not that either. Yeah. They actually made an addition to the running back room by signing veteran Cam Akers, the former Ram, the former Texan, the former Viking. But I don't care about where he's been. I care about where he's at now, which is the Big Easy. And in the Big Easy, Sean, Cam Akers make an impact with the Saints.
Well, I like the way you set that up, because it wasn't a wide receiver or a corner like we were thinking. It was a running back. That's running back number 8 on the roster.
Because we just talked about how many running backs they had the other day.
I remember watching the warm-ups, like, man, there's a lot of running backs. Well, they've added one more. We'll get to the actual running back room in a second, but Cam Akers, the player, 5'10", 217 pounds was the last listing I saw, give or take a few pounds. So he's in that, would you call him a small back? Not a small, maybe like a middle tier size-wise type back. First off, he's from Mississippi, and I remember his recruiting vividly. He was a can't-miss 5-star prospect, 99s all the way aboard. I went across the board. I went rechecked his 24/7 profile, the recruiting analytics site that tracks all the offers. He was a 5-star. Didn't realize he played quarterback in high school. His last year, he threw for 3,000 and ran for 2,000. So he was a guy. He was clearly it was Clinton, Mississippi. So clearly he was their guy.
The whole offense.
And I remember, 2016 was his senior year, so 17 was his class. So that would have been, at some point, Les Miles probably started recruiting him, and then Coach Orgeron picked up the recruiting. And remember, he was the interim coach that year and then was handed the full-time job after that season. I know they wanted him bad, but with the coaching change and a little bit of the uncertainty in the hiring process, it wasn't surprising that they lost out to Florida State. And he had a wonderful career at Florida State. 3 and flee, as I call it. He got in, got out, did what he was supposed to do, made his mark. I think he had 2,000-yard seasons. And then he got to the NFL, drafted second round by the LA Rams. And I got to be honest, followed his career, don't have his stats memorized. Felt like he made a little bit bigger impact than what the actual stats showed. A little underwhelmed when I went back and checked kind of the stats. He had a couple hundred yards in a few spots, never came close to 1,000, was never really the featured guy. Then he was it traded to Minnesota? Then signed with Houston, then went back to Minnesota.
Yep.
So he's a guy that, for only being 25 years old, and for a guy that was not that long ago, I mean, one of the premier players in America, his career's kind of slowed down a little bit. Sometimes you get a guy like this, it's a blessing in disguise because they're hungry and they've been humbled. He's 25 years old. There was a report that he requested to be traded when he was with the Rams in 2022. He denied that report. Anyway, he's here with the Saints. So what do I make of the signing? Well, what I make of the signing is simply this. He's got a chance to reinvent himself. He's got a chance to restart his career. Very curious to see what they identify as what he does well and how that differentiates from the rest of the backs on the roster, which they are a lot of them. I don't think his spot is guaranteed. I do think he's going to have to earn that spot. I do think he's a player that he certainly has a name, but in the big picture, kind of the total view of this signing, outside of just Cam Akers, what it's really telling me is simply this, Andre, is Kellen Moore basically just won a Super Bowl with an elite back. Kellen Moore looks at this running back room and does not see enough. I mean, they've got 8 guys right now in the running back room. Kellen Moore understands one of the biggest problems they had last year, the year before that, and even the year before that, was not the top end of the running back room with Alvin Kamara. It was the massive drop-off when you get behind Alvin Kamara. That has been a major problem. We've discussed it on this show, but it probably doesn't get quite the attention that it deserves. I mean, it was a crater when you went from Alvin Kamara to the next guy up. Alvin Kamara is going to turn 30 this year, okay? He cannot withstand the high volume carries and receptions. They're going to have to have a second reliable guy that they can count on. They've got other players there, but I don't think it's a stretch to think that Cam Akers can at least compete for that spot. But he's going to have to compete for that spot, not just that spot to be the number 2 running back, but compete for the roster spot. So I think I welcome the addition. I'm sure it was a low-cost addition, potentially very low risk, potentially high reward. We've said it a lot with these guys in this veteran June, July sort of time frame. So I have a problem with the signing, but it's hard to tell right now just how much of an impact he's going to make on this team.
Yeah, the question, can Cam Akers make an impact for the Saints? Well, first, he's got to make the roster.
Yeah.
And that's not a lock. I mean, there's a lot of backs in this running back room, and there's backs that you've made an investment into. Obviously, Alvin Kamara, we talked about it a few weeks ago. I think he's the best player on the offense, hands down, to me. Then you've got Kendre Miller, a guy who you invested, a 3rd-round pick into a couple years ago. You've got Devin Neal, a rookie you just drafted out of Kansas, 5th round, but he's got a lot of upside with him. So looking at those 3 guys, then you look at Cam Akers, and I ask myself, what can Cam Akers do that the other 7 backs on the roster can't do? You look at his last 3 years, it hasn't been pretty. I mean, for the Rams, he had, in 2022, his last year with the Rams, 786 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4.2 yards per carry.
That was his best statistical year?
Not his best statistical year. That was just his last full year with the Rams. Then in 23, he played for the Rams and the Vikings, 167, 2 touchdowns, 2.8 yards per carry. Last season, he played for the Texans and the Vikings, 444 yards, 2 touchdowns, about 4 yards per carry. But the biggest mark with Cam Akers that I see is he's almost like a quote-unquote old school back in which he doesn't catch the ball much. And the NFL has changed, and it's grown, and it's developed in a lot of ways to where if you're an elite running back in this league, there's a few exceptions like a Derrick Henry. But unless you're Derrick Henry running for 2,000 yards, you need to be able to catch the ball. You need to be a threat in the receiving game. And we've seen that throughout the history of successful Saints running backs. We saw it with, go back to Reggie Bush. We saw it with Pierre Thomas. We saw it with Darren Sproles. We're seeing it with Alvin Kamara right now, and we've seen it over the last 7 seasons. If you're going to be, and obviously this is a different coach, different offense, but in the NFL today, you need to be able to catch the ball. And I didn't even write down his receiving stats over the last few years because they're not worth mentioning. He's barely been involved in the receiving game at all. And so when I look at Cam Akers, I'm like, maybe the best he can be is what they expected Jamal Williams to be, maybe a kind of, power back, change of pace guy, because he is, 5'10", 5'11", but he's thick, he's stocky, he's a strong guy, and he's been used kind of in that power back role throughout his career. So maybe if he can give you that, but to me, you've got so much invested in some of the other backs in the room. I don't necessarily see Cam Akers making a big impact right now because I don't think he'll make the roster.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned you didn't break down his receiving stats. I did because something jumped out with the receiving. He didn't have a lot of receptions, but last year he had a lot of receptions for touchdowns when you consider how few receptions he actually had. He had 3 touchdown catches last year. He had 4 touchdown runs last year. That stood out to me because I saw 3 touchdown receptions and I'm thinking, okay, maybe he catches the ball back. But then I go check the reception stats and it was like those crazy Jimmy Graham stats from a couple of years ago. We had like 7 catches, 5 touchdowns. He had like 11 receptions or 12 receptions on the season. I'm sure y'all can look that up while you're watching this right now. But it was the ratio of touchdown receptions to actual receptions really was it was all out of whack. So that felt like a little bit of an anomaly that they were able to, whoever, Houston or Minnesota, they were able to kind of define certain matchups, and he was just popping open in red zone type situations. One thing I noticed just kind of rewatching a quick highlight reel, it wasn't a lot. I didn't do a deep film study. One thing I did notice when he was with the Rams, then Houston, then Minnesota, that's all outside zone teams. That's all wide zone teams. That has taken over the NFL, but I don't think Kellen Moore is going to be a guarantee outside zone play caller. So I think they're going to bring back some RPO. They're going to bring back some gap schemes. So just something to really watch. He's been in mostly outside zone schemes, and it looks like he's got a pretty good feel for the cutback in that scenario. But if you're not running a lot of that, is he a natural fit? Well, clearly they like something if they were thought enough of him to bring him in. But I continue to say this. They're going to keep giving themselves options. They're going to keep giving themselves opportunities to get that right because Alvin's not going to last. Yeah. He's turning 30. He's not going to last. You need someone that can give you the last good, true 2 that they've had. To me, was the Latavius Murray year. A guy that can come in. He gave him like 120 carries, like 500 yards. They need somebody that can give them that.
That boom and zoom.
And Ingram came back for the following year. He had another, year or 2 here in this. Well, how long was he here? Was it 1 year or 2 years when he came back?
I say it was 2, I think.
Okay.
I have to look it up.
Yeah, I have to look it up too. But that's what that job calls for.
Yeah.
Can Cam Akers give you that? I don't know. But you got to find someone that can do it. That's a role, in my opinion, you can't do by committee. I think because you got your lead dog in Alvin Kamara. He has his style. But you can't split 500 yards through 3 guys. I think you got to find a guy you can really count on to be the solid, rock solid number 2 in the running back pecking order. So I don't know if he's going to do that. I don't know if he's going to make the roster. But the truth of the matter is, outside of Devin Neal and Alvin Kamara, I don't know if anyone else is a guarantee to make the roster either. We can go through the names right now.
And that's what it comes down to. You mentioned, being able to fill that number 2 role, but when you look at that running back room, a question that popped into my mind earlier was, is the next Alvin Kamara or your next RB1, is he on this roster right now? Like, a lot of backs are there. You've got a lot of potential, a lot of, low risk, maybe high reward players, but, is there anybody who you can rely on outside of AK?
Well, let's go through names. You ready for these names?
Yeah,
okay, so you got AK, we know that. You've got Velus Jones Jr., who signed this offseason, who was a wide receiver running back hybrid. Maybe that helps make the team, maybe it doesn't. You have LSU's Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Right.
You have now Cam Akers. You have Kendre Miller, who the light bulb better come on. There is a blank slate, but the light bulb better come on. You have Devin Neal, who's a 5th-round pick. Is it a guarantee that he makes the roster? Not all day 3 picks are guaranteed, but I'm going to say he's probably the safest of that group. You have Fazende Valade, who had a nice catch on a wheel route from Spencer Rattler on 7-on-7s, the last practice I was able to see during minicamp. And then you have Marcus Yarns, the undrafted free agent out of, what was that? Was it Delaware maybe? It was a small school guy, Marcus Yarns. So my point is, if you're Cam Akers and you're looking at this, you get the tryout, you get the contract. While you still have to prove you can make the team, and I don't think it's a guarantee that he does, you have to look at it and say, you know what? My resume maybe stacks well enough to at least get myself into the mix or get myself into the conversation. So there's 2 arguments to be made here. It's, can you make the team? There's a lot of names there, and there's a lot of players. But if you look at who's ahead of him or in the room with him, can he beat those guys out? I think, yes, he can. Now, can he do it well enough to be the true number 2? That's the further mountain to climb. It's make the roster, then become number 2, because that's really what they need, is that number 2 running back.
Right. You know, and of the names that you mentioned, there's 4 that jumped out for me: Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, Kendre Miller, Devin Neal. Ironically, a 1st-round pick in Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
That's right.
2nd-round pick in Cam Akers, a 3rd-round pick in Kendre Miller, then you got a 5th-round pick in Devin Neal. So, I mean, these are guys who, coming out of college, they were, touted as some of the best running backs in their class just for one reason or another. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he just kind of got swept up in the whole Kansas City thing. He was injured for a time. Isaiah Pacheco wound up coming out and kind of outshining him in KC. Cam Akers, he's just bounced around. He hasn't been able to be consistent enough, over his young career. Kendre Miller, it's the injuries, and Devin Neal is the young, low-drafted rookie coming in with a bunch of upside. So those are the 4 guys who I'm looking at outside of AK in that running back room. I mean, I agree with you. I think Devin Neal, because of the upside, because Kellen Moore did draft him, I think he makes the roster. When I look at the others, I think the talent is still there for Kendre Miller. Some people I know have already written off Kendre Miller. I understand why you would write off Kendre Miller, because your best ability has to be availability, and that has not been the case for him. But when he has played, when he has been on the field, he's been good. He hasn't been great, but he's been good enough as a young running back to say, I want to see what else is in there. Maybe with the change of coach, change of OC, change in system, maybe that benefits Kendre Miller. I still want to, knock on that door a little longer. I'm not ready to give up on Kendre yet. So to me, it comes, if you're talking about making a roster, I'm looking between Cam Akers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Which one of those quote-unquote older veteran running backs can make the biggest impact in training camp and across preseason? If I had to pick between the 2, I'd pick Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now. But like you said, Cam Akers, it's a wide range of where he could fall. He could be RB7 in that room right now, or if he plays well enough, he could be RB2 in that room. So Cam Akers, again, low risk. I think
him and Edwards-Helaire came out the same year, right?
I think so, yeah.
There's something else, too, that I wanted to bring up. We don't know. The competition has not started at running back, because we always saw with him running routes on air and walkthroughs, and then a couple of them caught a few passes during 7-on-7. What you need a running back to do, which is catch the ball in the backfield, yes, but also run the ball, and also behind 11 guys with pads on, but also blitz protection, that sort of thing. We haven't even scratched the surface on that. So this competition is pretty wide open. Not pretty wide. It is wide open outside of Alvin Kamara, and I think I can appreciate the approach from Kellen Moore, because it shows the evolution of him, because he was a guy when he first got in the league, wanted to throw the ball, but he's always adapting to his talent. And I think he understands the strength of his offense is going to be that offensive line. If you can get a dynamic duo running back pair, at least a competent enough one to run the football effectively, that may be the key to effective offensive play, which can obviously be the key to getting more wins than everybody thinks this year, because you're going to have either Rattler or Shuck as your quarterback this year, and those guys are going to need time to grow. And so you're going to be leaning heavily on these guys. So I do like the awareness of, okay, let's give ourselves the opportunity, because the formula for success, at least early on, is going to be those big uglies up front and perhaps a dynamic running game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. And we had a podcast a couple weeks ago, will the running game be a strength for the Saints? And we both said it better be.
Yeah.
Because you're starting a rookie in Tyler Shuck or a second-year player in Spencer Rattler, and unless one of them shocks the entire world, neither of them is going to come in and throw for 4,500 and 45 touchdowns next year. They're going to need a running game to support them. The quarterback's best friend is a good run game. So whoever you start, you're going to need that. But speaking of those quarterbacks, looking at some of the receivers that they'll be throwing to, a conversation that kind of sparked up in our sports office. You've got your big three, quote unquote, of Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandin Cooks. But is Brandin Cooks your 2 or your 3 in this receiver room?
Any talk of him being a 2 is going to be, unless he's just surprises us all, where he's at in his career, he needs to be the 3. Yeah. He needs to be the 3, if not the 3-4 hybrid, because depending on if they get a big body receiver or pass catcher at some point, depending on his snap count. I think he's a guy you trust. He's a guy that can certainly make plays, but you got a young guy in Rashid Shaheed, you got a young guy in Chris Olave. Those two need to be your top 2 dogs. If you go out and get a 6'4" guy, maybe the distribution is a little different based off what that player can do. If Brandin Cooks is the 2, a couple of things would have happened. A, there's been a dip off from either Olave or Rashid Shaheed, not good. Or B, one of them got injured. Again, not good. Now, you can do a lot worse as a 3 than Brandin Cooks. I think Brandin Cooks can be a solid number 3 in the NFL. If you rank the hierarchy of number 3 wide receivers in the NFL, maybe he's higher up there. But I think his days as a 1 are certainly over. His days as a 2, I mean, you can talk yourself into it if he's on a hot streak, but I just think the way it's kind of laid out right now, he needs to be the 3, if not the 4. Because if they get a young, bigger, because you saw them out there, they all look the same.
Yeah.
They all look the same. They're all the same size. It's like, all right, where can these guys differentiate themselves? And I just think it's a lot of duplication in that skill set. So that's why I think for him, it's 3 at best for Brandin Cooks.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's going to be your wide receiver 3 because I need Olave on the field at all times. That's my best receiver. I especially need Rashid Shaheed on the field at all times because he is the one person who brings something to this offense that you don't have anywhere else, in his ability to take the top off the defense. If Rashid Shaheed is on the field, the defense has to honor him in a way that they don't have to guard anybody else, and that opens things up for everybody else. That opens things up over the middle because we saw it several times last year. We saw it against Carolina, against Dallas, against Kansas City. When Rashid Shaheed runs deep, he's always a threat for that deep bomb, and there's a quarterback on the roster right now who's very comfortable in throwing those deep bombs, so I definitely want those to be my 1 and 2. And Chris Olave, something interesting from day 2 of Saints minicamp, we got to talk to him in the locker room, and he mentioned he's excited about this Kellen Moore system because he thinks it'll give him an opportunity to do things that he hasn't necessarily got to do, like stretching the field. He mentioned when he first came in the league, he was seen as a speedster. He was a guy who could take the top off the defense, but he's kind of turned into more of a possession type receiver.
He's been an intermediate guy if you really watch him.
So, he's talking, looking at how the Eagles played at times last year and, seeing different things like that. He says he still got it. He wants to show that he can still, go down the field, and just like Shaheed, he can take the top off of defenses as well, And last year he talked about kind of adding the rack to his game, the run after catch, and he was able to do a little bit of that. He says there's still more that he can do in that realm as well, but he wants to be a threat down the field as well. So, yeah, I say all that to say I need Olave and Shaheed on the field. Brandin Cooks can be a high upside type of receiver 3 for me, right, as this roster is constructed right now.
And look, there's going to come moments in the season, provided, this is kind of wood, I don't know what you call it.
But wood.
There's going to come moments where they're going to have to lean on that veteran leadership, that veteran just experience of Brandin Cooks, and I think in those moments, his value will shine through. When you're describing their skill sets, I would say he's probably closer in the mold of a Rashid Shaheed, like a burner type. I've always felt like Chris Olave probably times well, but he just has more of a smooth feel to him as opposed to like that burner look that Rashid Shaheed has. But the truth of the matter is, in Olave's case, and you bring that up about him being kind of a second level guy, an intermediate 11 to 20 yard guy, that's cost him because that's where he's been getting hurt, is in the middle of the field. Maybe he is built for that. Maybe he's not built for that. But that's a guy you got to keep from the numbers to the sideline at some point, because once he goes between the seams and starts taking hits again, you just worry. And hopefully he's a guy that can, I don't know if it's just better ball placement, better protect yourself, whatever the case may be. You just hope he can avoid some of those collisions in the middle of the field, because that could be the ticking time bomb for him, obviously, in his career. So to me, look, what routes does Cooks excel at? I think it's, like I said, mostly mirrors what Shaheed does.
Yeah.
But if you got those three guys on the field at the same time, what kind of concepts are you running if they're all kind of in the same vein, the same skill set? Who is the run after catch guy? That's what I want to know.
Would you maybe put, if you have the three on the field at the same time, would you maybe put Olave in the slot? Because I think he's the best pure route runner
I think he
of
is
the three.
Too.
So he's probably the one who I would like to put in the slot, because I think he is probably your best short route runner, intermediate route runner. Mm-hmm. He's probably your best run after the catch guy as well. Maybe Shaheed can beat him out there. But yeah, maybe it opens more up for Chris Olave. But I mean, that's what we saw him doing at Ohio State. We saw him running down the field. He ran the 4.2 at the combine, which I think that was unofficial. They moved it to like a 4.31 or something like that. But we both talked about wanting to see Chris Olave take the next step in his career. Hopefully, with this new offense, that opens up some new doors for him.
It'll be interesting, because he's not going to have an experienced quarterback. We know that. Yeah. He's not going to have an experienced quarterback. He didn't play much with Rattler last year. So it'd probably be brand new for both. So there's going to have to be a chemistry developing going. But all that's going to be solved. We'll figure out the training camp, preseason, and probably not until well into the regular season before that, really becomes the identity of the team, who does what and where, and what situation. So that's what makes it all fun. So. All right, well, I guess that's it for us. Cam Akers, he's a Saint. We'll see how he does. Brandin Cooks, we see him as the 3. What do y'all think? All right, for Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.